Gentlemen, 5 o'clock, ladies, thanks for coming. The mayor told me to get the meeting started on time, so we certainly will. Mr. Butler, I think, is on the way. Mr. Huffman called, and he was called out of town for a medical emergency with his family, so he will not be here tonight, probably more tomorrow night. So, we certainly pass his apologies on to everyone. Real quick before we get to our report, just to remind council, the demolition that was scheduled over off on the rest home on Apple Street, there was council voted for that. We gave a 2-month extension based on the proposal. No one has come forward, so we're going forward with the demolition now. And Nolan, you talked to purchasing, and that process should begin relatively soon.
Begin this week on Ross Street.
Ross Street. The first meeting in January is our annual audit report, which is obviously the auditors work for you all, the council. So we certainly appreciate their time, and the process is really an annual process which they work with finance on. So with that being said, Tom, are you supposed to the number?
I'm gonna start.
Okay, so we'll kick it off now.
I'm Tom McGowan, partner of Scott Stewart, McGowan and King. With me is Patricia Rhodes, who's the partner in charge of the city audit, and Phil Stewart, our managing partner. We are pleased to be here to issue our report. I think you have it in front of you. The comprehensive annual financial report for the city of Burlington, commonly called the CAFR. And we'll go through some highlights on that, or go through the summary and the layout on that now. If you'll look, start at the table of contents. This is similar to what you've seen in prior years. It's in sections. The way these statements, the financial portion of these statements are laid out, you go to summary in the front, the details are in the back. So, and that is the same way it's been in prior years. The introductory section, there's a letter of transmittal from the manager and the finance officer. There's a GFOA certificate of achievement for this CAFR meeting the standards of the Government Financial Officers of America. This is the 14th consecutive is, I know it's 14th year, I believe it's the 14th consecutive year that the city has received this certification, which is something that the city and the finance staff should be proud of. This one will be submitted usually sometime in the summer to let you know whether you got it again this year. So we'll be listening this summer on that. An organizational chart for the city and a list of the officers of the city. The financial section is really our section of this. These are the city's financial statements. We have 4 opinion letters in here on these statements, but they are the city statements. We simply render an opinion on the statements. We'll talk about those opinion letters in a minute. The first one is right there, the independent auditor's report, which is the main one of the entire CAFR. The next section, management's discussion and analysis. I would like to think all of the council is going to read every page of this statement.
We've already completed that, John.
Yeah, okay, good. You would be the first governing board I've dealt with in 30 plus years that every member read the entire thing, but I know some of you will read most of it. But the reason I say that, if you don't read anything else, read the management's discussion and analysis for a couple of reasons. One, it's a good summary of the numbers that are in here, but it also goes in narrative form into a lot of other areas that aren't just audit related. But it's also a good preface to the rest of the statements and give you some background on what else is in here. The management discussion analysis are not covered by our opinion letter. next section, the basic financial statements are. Those first two statements, the government-wide financial statements, which start on page 1 under the financial section tab, right after the management discussion and analysis. There's a divider in there, basic financial statements. The statement of net position, in the for-profit realm, you call that your balance sheet. These statements are issued in accordance with governmental accounting standards. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASBA, is who issues these, or who issues the standards that we are required to issue our opinion based on. You'll see that when we get to the opinion letter. Exhibit 2, right behind that, pages 2 and 3, is the statement of activities, which again, in a for-profit realm, we call the income statement. The formats are laid out by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Some of it's different than what you're used to seeing, particularly if you're used to seeing a for-profit entity statements. But that's the background of how these work. The government-wide statements include all of your funds, your governmental entities, governmental funds, and your enterprise funds, which in your case, the enterprise fund is principally water and sewer fund. They're accounted for differently, and they are broken apart in these statements, except in these first two statements. They are the city-wide statements, that statement of net position, statement of activities. From there, you get into the fund financial statements that start breaking down what's in those first two statements. And then, starting on page 12, are the footnotes, which provide a lot of narrative, a lot of background on things like debt, debt structure. We talked in there about the bond refunding you did in this fiscal year. There were 2 new GASBAs that were adopted this year, 63 and 65. Some years those make a big difference if you're used to seeing these statements. This year, they really have to do with nomenclature. Descriptions have changed on the things, and that's described on page 43 in that footnote. You're required to adopt it, and you have done so. And we concur with that adoption. Then after page 43 in the footnotes, you get into required supplemental financial data, which runs to 47, page 47, and then after that, it's individual fund statements and schedules, which break down your special revenue funds, your capital projects funds, and much more detail on the general government fund and the water and sewer fund. All these schedules and funds run through page 122. Starting with the statistical section, that's another area that is not covered by our opinion letter. It's required disclosures, it's useful information, talks a lot about property tax base versus rate, talks about your levies, talks about debt, and has a lot of 10-year schedules for trends that I would recommend you look at. Again, there's a lot of compiling going on here, rolling up statements. As I said, you start at the back with all the detail, comes forward. If you look on page Roman numeral 17, in the MD&A, the management discussion and analysis, at the beginning it talks about what funds are where. If you want a little summary there. And then on page 13 in our footnotes, we talk about governmental funds and the breakdown. I think there's 17 special revenue funds, and there are details in the back of what capital projects fund, and the water and sewer fund. Are there any questions about what was said so far? Okay, Tricia, if you will, talk about the opinion letters that are in here.
Okay, all right, our independent auditor's report is on, Roman numeral, page 12. This states, about our audit. It states that we've audited the accompanying, financial statements of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the aggregate discretely presented component unit, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund, information of the city of Burlington as of and for the year ending June 30, 2013. And those collectively comprise the city's basic financial statements. Next paragraph talks about the management's responsibility for the financial statements. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, and that's in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And those principles state that this includes the design, the implementation, and maintenance of internal control, preparation and fair presentation of financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether that's due to fraud or error. The next paragraph talks about the auditor's responsibility. Our responsibility is to express opinions on the financial statements based on our audit. We conduct our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and those standards require that we plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the basic financial statements are free of material misstatement. Our audit involves performing procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. Our audit also includes evaluating the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of significant accounting estimates made by management, as well as evaluating the overall presentation of the financial statements. We believe that the audit evidence that we have obtained from our audit is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. The next paragraph talks about our opinion, which is an unqualified opinion, which of course that's the best and the opinion you want to have. The next paragraph talks about required supplementary information. This information is required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and that's the Management Discussion and Analysis, the Law Enforcement Officer's Special Separation Allowance, and the other post-employment benefits schedules of funding progress and the schedules of employer contributions. And since these are required, they are included in the statements, but we have applied limited procedures to these required supplementary information. So we do not express an opinion on this information. Now there's some more supplementary information included, and it's not required as part of the basic financial statements, but it's included for additional analysis. The combining an individual fund financial statements, the budgetary schedules, other schedules, and the schedule of expenditures of federal and state awards are the responsibility of the management, and they're derived directly from the underlying accounting and other records used to prepare the basic financial statements. And since that's the case, we include this in our auditing procedures, and so we do issue an opinion on these, and these are also an unqualified opinion. The introductory information and the statistical sections have not been subjected to the auditing procedures, so we do not express an opinion on those. The last paragraph talks about required reports based on our government auditing standards, and there's actually 3 reports, and they begin on page 147. And these, the purpose of these reports is to report on our consideration of the City of Burlington's internal control over their financial reporting, and on our test of its compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, and other matters. If you turn to page 147, you'll see that report, and then the 2 other reports following it. are the report on compliance with requirements applicable to major federal programs, and then the one on page 151, which is the report on the major state programs. And of course, these are all reports that are due to the grant monies that the city received. And if you turn to page 156 and 157, you can see the schedule of the expenditures of these federal and state awards that the city made during the year. Are there any questions?
Why don't you go and talk about internal control?
Oh, okay. Okay, well, of course, we consider internal control of the city when we're preparing or doing our audit. And sometimes we issue a, what's called a SAS 115 letter. And if you remember last year, we did issue a SAS 115 letter with just some, they were mainly recommendations for opportunities to strengthen internal control and operating efficiency. And one of them was based on, or due to credit cards, some things we found with credit cards, and then a wellness program. Well, both those matters have been taken care of and resolved. So nothing came to our attention this year that rose to the level that we needed to report to you in a letter. So we are not issuing a SAS 115 letter.
So other than financial data and statistics and financial documentation that's in here, you guys look at operational practices like segregation of duties?
Correct.
Things like
Correct.
that.
That's part of the internal control.
We have to, in order to schedule, to plan the work we do, the first thing we have to do is study internal control. See what, because that determines what test we need to do with financial records. So that's the first requirement of any audit. Go ahead.
The other thing I was gonna ask is in the auditor's responsibility letter on your Roman numeral 12, there's a specific statement relating to the Burlington Downtown Corporation not being audited. Is there a reason that was identified specifically?
Because part of the downtown corporation is included, the governmental monies, maybe correct me if I say this wrong here, the governmental monies that go to downtown corp are included by GASB, required by GASB to be included in your statements. The rest of downtown corporation is not part of that. Anything they raise outside donations, activities, etc., is not part of this.
Only the dollars we contribute.
Only the dollars that are tax dollars, in essence. Did I say that right?
So the other monies, the other entities that we give money to, it's not specifically mentioned, like airport authority, that sort of thing.
Those tax dollars that they have, that's in there, that's their tax dollars. Even their separate tax, or tax dollars, are they not? You're saying they're not reported?
No, they are included. It's the money that's not tax dollars.
They raise new money privately through private donations.
Anything that you guys assess as part of the ad valorem is included in here. Anything that is theirs that they're dealing with is not part of that, is not included in here. It's not a complete consolidation of downtown.
What we would like as a staff to recommend though is that any of the groups that the council shares public money with, that we ask them to provide a full audit
Absolutely.
to the city. I think that would protect, I don't know.
That would include the airport?
The
Who else
airport,
would that include?
Chambers and active.
active, and then.
There's some, and I think they've got this letter from the meeting. Tricia referred to the SAS 115 letter. SAS is Statement of Auditing Standards. What you're getting is another letter that's the required disclosures any auditor is required to make to the auditing entity or to the governing board. And let me repeat and follow up on something Harold said in the introduction. We work for the City Council of Burlington. We work with city staff. We work for the City Council. relationship. This letter is required disclosures. We do have an engagement letter. We also, as you know, Local Government Commission in North Carolina statutorily controls how audits are done in this state. We have a contract that has to be approved by the local government of North Carolina, and every auditor of any governmental entity in North Carolina goes through that process. Getting back to your question, Councilman Butler, the planned scope and timing of the audit, this planned scope and timing starts with an internal control study. And I want to note the date on there, April 25th. We start in the spring, and I think our field work ended in October. So it's about a 6-month process by the time you look at internal controls, and because you've got to do that before year end, and then by the time you get all the cutoff in and all the information on final numbers, it's usually fall. Significant accounting policies are decided upon by management in consultation with the governing board. They're described in note I to the financial statements. There were no transactions entered into by the governmental unit during the year for which there is a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus. I mentioned there are 2 new governmental accounting standards that are in here. You are complying with governmental accounting standards, GAAP for governmental entities. We have to talk to you about estimates. Certainly there are estimates in here. The significant material estimates for something, an entity like you guys has to do with reserves, and particularly doubtful accounts. A lot of water and sewer questions always about what's collectible. You have a tax lien for uncollectible taxes. Whether that will ever be collected, who knows? But it's out there and it's in this statistical section. We are required to disclose to you if there are any significant difficulties in dealing with management. There were none. We worked with them. Contrary to what you hear some of the politicians in Washington say, that it's not an adversarial relationship, it's not a good audit. I don't agree with that. But there is no question and cannot be a question of who we work for. We work in any audit for the governing board of the entity, whether it's for-profit, not-for-profit, governmental, it doesn't matter. If there were disagreements with management, we're required to disclose that. As I said, there were none. There was a representation letter from management dated October 25th, in which the city manager and the city finance officer represented to us a fairly long list of things, and we relied upon that letter. And that's pretty much it with that. Any questions? We are very glad to get to do this. We are just down the street. As far as the office handling this audit, we are available. Any of you know how to get a hold of us, do not hesitate to contact us if you have any questions about this statement.
With all that being said, then obviously you think that the city of Bronx is in good financial shape.
I think these statements,
Read your line. Oh, yes.
I think the Local Government Commission of North Carolina said that they have their standards of where you're not in good shape anymore, and you're a long ways from there. Let's put it that way. In any governmental entity has that, and we've talked about this in the past. You can either save up money for what you're going to spend that you can't fund in 1 year, or you borrow the money and pay off the debt. And you guys deal with that decision all the time, and it's reflected in this statement.
Thank you.
Bill, if you could do your annual differentiation between, the general fund and the enterprise fund in reference to just how the enterprise fund certainly differs from our general operation.
Well, certainly, your, the way you operate, you are like a for-profit enterprise in the sense that you have to have capital, which to fund every department, that you operate. And so it can't be done on a shoestring, and there is, some, science and calculated value to the amount of working capital you might need. But Tom talked about, water and sewer receivables, for example. They don't come in like clockwork. We've been through a tough economy where in the for-profit environment, there's been a lot of problems with paying bills and handling cash flow. You deal with that by your own efficiencies within your departments. You collect those receivables, but they stretch, and when they stretch, you need more money. Carry it over to, that's the working capital, that's the money on which you operate. But the same process applies in many ways when you think about the capital needs you have, whether it's a police car fleet, or whether it's water and sewer lines, which some of which are hundreds, well, not hundreds, but old, and so they have to be provided for and replaced. So good stewardship, the city's resources say that it's not just about the budget, it's about the capital needs too. You can even view it as two budgets, the operating budget and the capital budget. And so you're always looking, as the council members do, at what's coming next year, but maybe what's more important is what's coming in 10 years, or each of those 10 years. So it's a pretty complicated process. Your organization does it well and has handled it well, but it is about planning, and it's about that financial planning. What are you doing to preserve the future, whether it's infrastructure or the protection of our community, all those important things you do that are tied directly to how you provide financial planning. That's how I look at it. It's a financial planning matter. You deal with it much like you would your own individual financial planning objectives. You have to think about where you're going, quantify it, and talk about the quality of what you're going to do. So that's how I would answer that, Harold.
Any questions?
One comment related to that, I think if you look in here, it's about 23 million in expenditures and outlay in water and sewer. If you add up the variable cost in there, it has to do with how much you're putting through those lines. I think a quick glance, it's a little over $1 million. So that over 20 million, well over 20 million, that 23 million is maintaining the lines in place, maintaining the plants, maintaining the lakes, all the service infrastructure that's required, and those costs are the same whether you run a gallon through there or 100 million gallons through there. And that's something we've talked about in the past, that with water and sewer, the fixed cost is huge. The marginal cost of an additional gallon is very small.
That's really important. She got an email today in reference to what Representative Moffitt concerns of Asheville continues at a pretty high level with water and sewer. From Raleigh before Christmas, the fixed cost is well over 90% of any water and sewer operation. And of course, when the textile industry went down, fixed cost went down very little, even though the amount of use reduced significantly. So that's why we do everything we can to expand our system, be regional if we can, to get that flow back up in terms of revenue to work with the fixed costs. Like Tom said, they work for you guys. I'm sure y'all have anytime, any calls, one privately.
Any questions you may have after you finish reading this cover to cover, feel free to call us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting us do it.
Okay, I think by federal regulations, we're required to do an overview on an annual basis of community development block grant program. So Sean is already there, ready to go. Good for her. Sean, you're up.
Thank you. I'm here tonight. I'm just going to do a brief presentation on our community development program and then discuss some changes at the federal level regarding fair housing and what Burlington's responsibility is on that. Community development in Burlington revolves around our two federal grant programs, the Community Development Block Grant and our HOME program. We do projects through those programs with our housing rehabilitation program, public facilities, public services, our construction training program, and infrastructure projects. And those are just some pictures of some of the past projects that we've done. Under our CDBG program, we are required under that program to meet a national objective. That has to be whether the project will benefit low to moderate income persons, address slum or blight, or meet a particular urgent community development need in the community. So when we go through our projects for the year, we have to look at that to make sure that those projects are going to meet those objectives of the program. We are in a consortium with Greensboro, Guilford County, and Allegheny County to receive our HOME funds. And we use those funds again to do our housing rehabilitation activities because those funds are particularly for affordable housing in the community. Other eligible CDBG activities include relocation cost, our infrastructure projects. You can do home buyer assistance, public services, some types of acquisition and clearance and demolition activities if they, again, qualify underneath those national objectives and are illustrated in your consolidated plan. Speaking of plans, we're required annually to submit to HUD our annual action plan. That is developed from our 5-year consolidated plan that we do every 5 years. Our last one was done in 2010. We'll be coming up on a new planning process in 2015. At the end of the year, we also have to do our report, somewhat similar to an audit that we submit to HUD, which is our Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, our CAPER, that details out how we've expended the funding for the year and our goals that we've met and what objectives we've met through our programs. Just so you have an idea of what's going to be coming forward over the next year, we're in the process of developing our annual action plan now. We'll be holding our first public hearing at the second meeting in February to receive public comments on that plan. In March, our environmental reviews will be completed for those particular projects that we're going to be incorporating into the plan. We have to do environmental reviews from anything from administrative activities all the way through our big infrastructure projects. In April, our second public hearing will be held for the public to comment on that plan. At that point, the entire plan will be developed. In May, council approves that final plan and that's submitted to HUD. In August of this year, we'll begin the process of developing our consolidated plan, which will be our plan on how we expect to spend funding over the next 5 years and what the city projects out as being those goals and objectives on how they want to spend these federal dollars that we receive. So, to regarding fair housing. Since the city is an entitlement community, we are required to affirmatively further fair housing in our community as part of a regulation of HUD. What that means by HUD with fair housing is that prohibits discrimination based on the 7 protected classes of the Fair Housing Act of 1964. Those classes are discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, and familial status. Oh, click too much. Just so you're aware, these are some examples of what fair housing discrimination is. I have these listed in the handout. Again, you can't just, in the community, you can't just say we just rent to a specific religious population, or we just rented the last unit, even though there's available units there. You can't discriminate on rent for persons with disability and charge them a higher interest rate, and those type of things. And one of the things that I run into mainly here at the city is I get calls regarding reasonable modifications, where landlords are not willing to allow the tenant to make accommodations such as grab bars to their unit. So that's prohibited underneath the Fair Housing Act, so they get referred to the appropriate individuals to make that complaint if that's necessary. Again, that's one of the major things that we get calls about pretty regularly regarding fair housing. Does anybody have any questions about those specific things? Okay. So there has been some changes come about over the past year regarding HUD and their fair housing regulations. As it stands now, the city is required to submit or to have on hand an analysis of impediments to fair housing. Our last one was completed in 2010, and the regulations as they are stated now do not require that that be done annually or every 5 years. It just says that the community has to have one on hand and address those impediments as part of their annual action plan that they submit to HUD. In July of this year, HUD has published new federal fair housing regulations that are going to require that communities submit to them 270 days prior to the submission of their consolidated plan an assessment of fair housing. So this is going to change how we do fair housing and what's required of us in our community. Also included within those regulations is the ability to do a regional assessment of fair housing, allowing communities regionally to get together to look at fair housing as a whole, and then particularly for their existing communities. There is a push because of this, because there has been some major fair housing issues that have come about over the past couple of years. The one that kind of put this on the forefront was a case out of Westchester County, New York, where the county had to pay back $62 million in relief and damages for fair housing discrimination. Most recently in Dallas, Texas, HUD has found that the city of Dallas, Texas is in non-compliance for fair housing because they did not allow a low-income development to happen in the downtown area. So, us being an entitlement community, we are again subjected to these fair housing regulations that are coming at the federal level. Again, these new fair housing regulations are in the draft form, but we've been told by HUD that there's a chance, that they're pretty much going to get approved after the first of the year. In an effort to stay on the forefront of this, and because we are going to have some type of plan in place and an update to our existing plan, the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, which is involved in the Regional Plan for Sustainable Development, got together with Burlington, Greensboro, Guilford County, and the Surrey Home Consortium to work on a regional assessment of fair housing. So we are in the beginning stages of doing a regional assessment of fair housing. Basically what this is going to look like is High Point is going to serve as the lead entity for the project. The final report is going to describe the region's housing market with a specific section for Burlington. And it's going to incorporate public participation and community engagement as it is existing in the proposed rule. Right now, we met in December and had phone interviews with some consultants that we put an RFP out to through the regional council. That consultant has been chosen. Today we had a phone conversation with the consultant on how the plan is going to start going forward. And the consultant has, made the point that they would like to come and speak to the council sometime at a work session over the next couple months to just detail out more of what they expect the plan to look like and what it's going to be going forward. The final, the draft actually will be available in August with the final presentation to governing bodies in September. For Burlington, we have several responsibilities as being a part of this regional plan. That will include recommending individuals to serve on a regional fair housing committee. We're looking at about 5 individuals to do that. Arrange outreach to the community, give advice on selecting a consultant, which we've done, and also review and approve the final documents along with the drafts, and then address any of the fair housing issues that are found in the plan. Who has questions?
Sean, did a good job. Nobody had questions.
Well, regardless of the fact, we're obligated to do something about fair housing. We're just trying to jump on the bandwagon on the front end to have this in place before our consolidated plan starts. So at the end of that planning process, we don't have to go back and do something else. And the fact that we're doing it regionally, HUD is on a big kind of push to do things regionally and collaborate. So we will be, looked upon as, being progressive and doing that project regionally.
Questions for Sean?
We got one, Piedmont Regional Council of Government. What is it, 12 counties that we're involved with in this? Is that what that is?
Maybe 16 now.
Yeah, okay. My question is, are we gonna get our fair share of this thing once it's completed?
Yeah, the only piece of they had, through their sustainable regional plan, they have a consultant that works through PTRC, and that individual kind of just brought us together. We have an MOA with actually the city of High Point, so we're putting in a percentage of funding based upon our population size. So yeah, we're gonna definitely get the product that we need, because I won't pay the money if we're not getting the product that we need. So we have that MOA in place, so it's actually with the city of High Point as opposed to being with PTRC. They were just kind of the organization that got us together. Thank you.
Thank you. For the past couple of months, several of the council members has brought up questions concerning some departmental operations of just how we operate functionality of it. So we sat down as a staff and began to identify some operations, and we often hear a lot about police and fire, parks and rec, and public works, but I thought we'd start this thing off, and we'll do one each work session with information technology, which I know in the last 12 to 13 years, quite frankly, since I did this job, is probably the one department that has grown, not really in numbers of staff, but in terms of importance to us more than any particular department from where it was to where it is now and how we depend on it. So Roger's got about 10 minutes, I believe, to brief you, and certainly questions about what they do. Roger?
Thank you, Howard. On the screen are some words that our customer city staff have said about us, and I want to thank Rachel Hawley for putting these together in what's called a word cloud, I believe. Up front, I'd like to thank my staff, and they've just done a wonderful job, as you can see from here. And without them, none of these systems would run in the city, so I want to give credit and thanks to them. The IT department is a small, behind-the-scenes operation, not typically seen by the public. In fact, like a lot of people in local government, we can say, if we're invisible, we're doing our job. And this shows what Harold was talking about, that back in 2004, IBM began doing a survey of actually globally, companies, globally, CEOs, trying to identify the critical forces behind their businesses. And in 2012, 71% for the first time of these executives ranked technology as the most important factor that would impact their businesses in the next 3 to 5 years. This was surprising to me, how technology has become so critical to the daily operations of businesses worldwide, rising from number 6 in 2004 up to number 1 in 2012. And local government's no different today. Peggy Reese was saying, and I quote, "The whole city stops if the network goes down. Finance cannot function without the computer system, and thus cannot function without IT." This is true of many departments, and an example is our Burlington Police Communications Center. Today, the 911 calls, if a citizen dials 911 today, that call is actually routed over the city network, over city fiber. It's no longer over AT&T copper. It goes, but the IT department has become critical to the operations of the city. Recently, Police Chief Jeff Smythe used a term that I wasn't familiar with to describe what IT does for him. He called IT a force multiplier, well, technology that we provide for him as force multiplier technology. And I wasn't familiar with that term, and so I Googled it, and discovered that it's a military term used for a tool or technology that in the hands of a small combat force allows them to accomplish what only much larger combat forces can do. In the city, this can mean that as the need for more services increases, technology can actually offset the need for additional personnel, making technology a hiring avoidance tool, enabling the city to do more for citizens with the same number of employees. In police and fire, this translates to safer communities and safer streets. IT has partnered with several city departments to help them meet their goals, and that they may not be able to meet without force multiplier technology. For example, the installation of security cameras by IT at several of Tony Law's recreational facilities has resulted in the conviction of perpetrators in the court system, and has led to a decrease in vandalism and consequently a decrease in the replacement of cleanup costs for the city. I thought I'd put a bit of history up here in this slide. On the left is the city staff back in 1998. 6 full-time, 1 man, 7 women. There's 1 part-time person not pictured there. And on the right, 6 years later, 1 more employee, 7 full-time and 1 part-time in 2004. 10 years later, today, we still have the same number of staff. And if you look at the next slide, this is where we've come since 98 to 2014. We started out with about 60 computers. We've got 10 times that number today. Servers the same. About 100 foot of fiber optic cable back then. We've got 15 miles of fiber optic cable now in the city. And mobile users, there wasn't such a thing as mobile users back in 98. We've got about 150 in police, fire, and inspections today. Of course, the disclaimer down the bottom, IT has just changed dramatically in what we do. we've become much more technical, we've empowered employees, pushed work out to them. People do stuff today that IT was doing back, I mean, and you know how the community, the same thing with iPads. One of IT's goals is to put these tools into the hands of our customers, who are departments, city departments, to increase their efficiency, increase their ability to provide service to their customers, which is mostly the city of Burlington residents, and to reduce cost in their organizations. And I've got a couple of examples of reducing cost. As mentioned, the cleanup costs for Recreation Department. Paperless, when IT implemented digital faxing, we got centralized digital faxing where 450 employees can send and receive faxes from their desks. We retired several AT&T phone lines when we installed the digital faxing, and 11 phone lines when we installed a voice over IP system out at the animal shelter and that campus out in Fall River. Just that alone saves the city over $15,000 a year. I know it's not a lot, but you know, every little bit helps. We provide support for about 50 locations across the city, right from up north, the Lake Hammock and the golf course, down south to the wastewater treatment plant in Lake McIntosh, and all the way from behind the TA truck stop. There is a lift station there, Springwood Park out there in Guilford County too, all the way to the east side, the Animal Adoption Center, as I mentioned. And we provide 52 Wi-Fi hotspots for both the city and the public, 62 routers and firewalls, 150 cameras, and thousands of miscellaneous devices like printers, scanners, cameras, projectors, wireless hotspots, keyboard, mice, etc., etc. A lot of this is boring stuff for you, I know. Talking about email at the bottom there, this slide shows one of 3 spam filters that the city puts in place. We received incoming email, 12 million emails were addressed to the city in 2013. Only about 10%, less than 10% of those get through to the city. So, you know, we got 91% of those emails are malware, viruses, phishing, spam, etc.
Phishing, what is phishing?
Trying to get personal information. I'd like your credit card, so they're phishing. You know, that's phishing emails.
It's not spelled the way you thought it was spelled.
Yeah, not spelled the same way, but it's the same thing. They're phishing for information, trying to get information. A few examples, and I won't go through all of these. Obviously, there are too many here, but IT has provided video conferencing. This right here, this camera, there's video conferencing in this room, manager's conference room. The fire training is a very interesting one. Chief Smith could address this better than I can, but Jay, your folks, the type of training that they do over this video conferencing?
Right, essentially we had primary emergency medical training or certain fire training. We would have to pull our units from the stations into headquarters for a class, especially EMT and other classes. They would work together to locations that have to come in. And now with this particular system, our battalion chiefs, and you know, they can teach a class at headquarters fire station and the guys stay out in their districts. That's what we're trying to get them to do. And so they're out there, they can watch it, they can ask questions. It was approved by Alamance Community College for the continuing education. We still have to come up for practical skills where they have to actually see you do the stuff for EMT. But other than that, classroom, it's keeping people out, it's saving on fuel, it's keeping them where they need to be. That's awesome.
Thanks, Jay. Log Me In is a software. A few years ago, it became apparent to IT that you saw the increase in workload that we have. We needed force multiplier technology, thanks Chief for that term, to allow us to serve our customers without adding staff. And this particular software allows a technician to actually log in to somebody's computer and see what they see on the screen, fix the problem remotely. They don't have to, like Jay Smith, they don't have to drive out to that location. They can help Peggy Reese's folks down at the annex building from right here in City Hall or wherever they are. Water resources folks, we allow them to remotely monitor critical pumps in the water plants. We provide support for the Royals baseball stadium, etc., etc. I mean, a lot of stuff on there. We replace 1/5 of the city's computers annually, and that takes a lot of time too. I'd like to conclude this presentation by highlighting a few of the technologies in the patrol vehicles. These vehicles are high-tech offices on wheels, and IT provides 24/7 support 365 days a year. We're probably the smallest department that does that has round-the-clock support. Today's vehicles are equipped with hardened laptops that display critical information from our 911 communications personnel, providing officers with life-saving information about the situations facing them. Cars are also equipped with special video cameras that can be programmed to begin recording if the vehicle exceeds a certain speed or if the lights and sirens are activated. And this video is stored in the vehicle until that vehicle pulls into the police department. Then it is uploaded automatically without the officer doing anything over high-speed Wi-Fi that IT's installed onto servers, and that can be pulled off for court cases or whatever, but it's stored there in the police department. The car is also equipped with software e-crash and e-citation. I don't know if you're familiar with those terms, but this software allows officers to report an accident right at the scene of the accident and to issue printed citations in the field with their in-car printers. So they actually have printers in the cars. Data from these systems is automatically, I think every 4 hours, wirelessly transmitted back to PD and also to the criminal justice system in Raleigh. Patrol officers are also able to monitor fixed land camera video feeds. For example, Burlington Housing Authority cameras can be monitored from inside patrol vehicles. And this final slide is an example of something that we've been working with Chief Smythe on. It's a prioritized list of, I think there are over 20 different projects, IT projects for PD, the police department. This is just an example of those. For one department, we support 12 departments in the city. I hope this has been interesting for you. I'll try to make it a little interesting. I know IT's kind of dry.
Questions?
Got one. Disaster recovery,
Yes, sir.
do you have it off site?
We're working on that. We are hoping to use the Fire Station 6 for that. But yes, we actually do have off-site. About 6 months ago, we purchased a backup system, and this is it uses a Pelican case, which is watertight, and we put the hard drives in there, and we can take them off-site.
Any other questions?
Roger, about halfway through that, Bob and I were talking, I think we call it laying the foundation, and then you put the pictures up there. How many more people do you want?
How many can we have?
Enough of that topic. Yeah.
I will say this. We got a report, there's an awful lot of budget crises from a lot of agencies. And Jeff received a comment earlier, this week. Our contract with Pearland Housing Authority with off-duty officers and city council because they're just not funds. These cameras, I think, Jeff, I'm not speaking to you now, they become, I think, more critical in certain areas, because people simply, it's just because of lack of funds.
Housing authority, the funds to pay for the off-duty police officers.
So, it's a force multiplier concept or whatever. There's some practicality to that, going forward, for us to be able to provide some services that I think people can expect us to provide.
Thanks, Roger. Pretty much fees.
Okay, Roger, we appreciate that. At the conversation concerning items going forward, Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Huffman had spoke to publicly about Grand Hopedale Road in reference to, we believe where it stood in the MPO, and then also, I think there was some conversation followed up by an email in reference to maybe a corridor study. So, with that being said, I've asked Nolan to go back and pull the history of where we are with Grand Hopedale Road concerning the MPO, and I believe that Mayor Pro Tem Huffman and Councilman Ward has a meeting next week, I believe, on this with the state, and then also give you sort of the history of this, and maybe then ask what the direction where you might want us to go moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Harold. I'll just briefly summarize. This project was part of the MPO process for a long time, back in the late 90s. It actually was funded, as best I can tell, from Mike Nunn, and eventually pulled because there were significant issues in terms of exactly how this project would be done. What you see here in red, this is Grand Hopedale Road, all the way to the railroad tracks. This is North Main Street, which is Providence Road as well, going into Graham. This is the US 70. That's the northern extent of the project. This project is still in the MPO process. It was scored in 2012 and submitted, and so it definitely is. It still has a DOT project number. It did not get funded. The only projects we have funded right now, well, actually only one is NC 54. In the MPO, 119 is funded as well. But keep in mind, both of those projects, just throw this so you'll remember this, are getting ready to get restored because their construction dates were after 2015. That was the threshold for whether you're going to get rescored or not. So all of our projects are going to get rescored, and that's what we're getting ready to go into. But just to recap this, what was the final alternative was to build a separated grade or bridge over the railroad pass that would swing out and tie into North Main Street with the idea that that feeds to the interstate. That obviously is an expensive solution, but that's the solution that DOT ended up with back in the late 90s.
And Nolan, that wasn't the original project, that was it?
Best I can tell, well, there were some alternatives to tie in here as well. There were a couple alternatives which look very similar, but they're
wasn't the initial project to come even further to the, right through that area right here?
That's a good point.
Take out, that was the original project.
Yes.
Taking out several, that's the Providence Church, right?
That's right. Well, you've got the cemetery here.
Yeah, right there. So
You have a property that is eligible to be part of historic registry.
Yes.
And you also had some,
It's a mobile home park
yeah,
right there.
some some justice issues there in terms of lower income.
Where you're putting that, wasn't that the original plan, right through there, straighten it out?
That is my understanding, that's
Yes.
how it began.
Yes.
Which logically, you would think that's where you would
Sure.
begin a project, to tie straight in. But those issues drove this alternative to be the final one.
So which one's gonna get scored, the one in the red?
The one in red, I'm just showing you what the project is now, let's get it scored.
But tell us the history then of how the original got put over to that elbow in there.
Well, it's just those issues, from what I've learned from Mike Dunn, is that, the concerns over obviously impacting the cemetery, historic, property, as well as, displacing lower income, housing, those things combined led to moving the alignment, or potential alignment to, further over in this direction. This still impacts, a number of houses and a few businesses as well.
And but it never crossed Church Street.
It was requested at one point to take it up to Vaughn Road, and DOT had evaluated that based on the information I've read in the files and determined that that wasn't needed to extend it to that point.
It'd be nice to go all the way to East Long School.
Of course, that's been a while, not to say that these things can't be
How do you
rediscussed.
think that would affect the extension of that to Vaughn Road? How do you think that would impact potential development of that property? Don't you think that would be a substantial benefit?
Yeah, in fact, we did an intersection study here years ago through the NPO, and one of the things that came out of that was to make this a, 3-lane section. But that would increase your left turn storage, which is very minimal right now, and also has the right turn. So definitely some capacity improvements that need to be made on this leg. And we hope that through development, we can get some of that. Obviously, we can't, ask people to do things that aren't impact from their business. We need to be fair about it, obviously, and that's what we always try to do. But if the impact of this business, indicates that more left turn storage is needed, then that's something we'll work with them to try to get that improvement done. But the balance of that, certainly would be something we would try to seek DOT funds with, or, maybe can leverage that with our dollars, like we've been trying to do.
Now, we'll take it to Vaughn Road, when you get to Vaughn Road, which is right here, then it gets really tight after that in terms of right of way availability going on.
Vaughn Road's gonna be on there.
Oh, that's still, I'm sorry, that's
Yeah.
yeah.
It gets really tight when you start getting to the school, and then you've got county facilities there on the right.
Now that East County's closed,
Exactly. Does anybody have any idea what Colonel?
I think Duke University owns it now, right? Or
So
Duke
there
Medical.
was something in the paper that somebody, I don't know if they were gonna hold me back up or not, but it was something listed as LLC that was over there now. But it goes right there from Church, from Vaughn Road back out to Johnny's Restaurant right there, almost where
And they
it
come back
opens
up.
up.
Talking about Johnny's?
Yeah, where it opens up, up toward East Lawn,
Going back the other way.
going that way.
Oh.
You got,
I thought it
three
was on
lanes in
Western,
there.
that's Western.
You got 3 lanes in there now, from where the old street, right there, yeah, right in there,
Yeah, it's wider there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you got.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wider.
Well, just from the standpoint, Bob, if you're
Yeah.
kind of chime in here, we sit here on this TAC, you see projects that, when you look at sometimes and say, well, something like this, a widening of this road, particularly in this area, we've had these meetings in East Burlington, we've had these listening post sort of things, and we talk to people, and sometimes if you put public dollars into infrastructure in the area, it kind of jumpstarts some private sector dollars, being put in there, and already we're seeing the county has done, I think, a pretty good job with what they've refurbished their buildings down there over the course of probably the last 10 years for the use they've got. Western Electric, with the help of our planning department did a pretty good job of getting that back into the private sector. Unfortunately, it didn't get refurbished. It got really held for speculation, but there's, of course, that's changed hands, in recent, in the past year, I think. Lawson Brown represent the client on the parking lot of Western Electric. So you're seeing some interest in the private sector there. And just from the standpoint of sitting on this committee and thinking, well, what could we do as a city? We hear this, for East Burlington, what can we do? What are you gonna do? From this standpoint, if you could invest some dollars in widening that road, obviously the property on the southern section down there where our park is, and on the opposite side of the road is terribly either unutilized or underutilized. What do you got there? You got a car wash, you got some sort of tire business there, vacant lots,
Mobile home.
Storage facilities and that sort of stuff. That's underutilized property there. And if we could jumpstart some interest in the private sector in marketing those for higher use, and also straighten that road out. That turn that you have there as it goes into ground, it's a problem. It's always been a problem.
Well, the priority there would be the sales pitch on this particular project would be the connection to the interstate. That would be the big sales job. Also, what you're saying is that if we could do something to improve that area, then it would jumpstart the economy in that area along Hopedale Road. And then also knowing that we got something forthcoming to the parking lot of Western Electric, that would help that particular situation as well. So there's a couple different approaches. It just depends on how the scoring goes. And Bob and David have the opportunity. How does this work? They have the opportunity to score, or is it just the committee score?
The NPO,
Right.
at some point, coming up in the spring, will have to submit basically 11 projects, and they'll all receive 100 points. That would be the smart way to do it. It would be 1,100 points. We should submit 11 projects to give them all the maximum opportunity to score high, because you recall, this is a primarily data-driven process now. Any statewide projects are 100%. Regional projects, which are numbered routes, are 75%. And then you have, this would be considered a division project because it's not a numbered route. Okay, so that's a 50% data-driven process. So with the locals being, the NPO and DOT have significant input in the local projects.
Let's see, we have, Hopedale Road would be one, Alamance Road from South Church Street to Medon Street, the widening of that would be one. The Rockwood O'Neill project would still be on there as one.
You know the similarities here, these are north-south corridors.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, but I agree.
But is
The
it-
other one would be the widening of 70 all the way to Greensboro. That's another one's how somebody's.
This is a list of projects that was scored in the 2002 process, and these will be rescored. These were the ones, at that time, we submitted 13, and then DOT had a couple more in here, but as Graham Hopedale Road widening was in there, and obviously it did not score very high. And those factors involve volume, accident data, benefit to cost ratios, and now that some of the formulas have been adjusted somewhat, there's economic development piece, they use
That's
software
what,
called
that,
credits.
okay, the economic piece and the interstate piece have to be towards that Hopedale for us to move that up the line. It has to be.
And the same thing with Rockwood O'Neill.
Well, the Rockwood O'Neill in itself is gonna score well because of the north-south corridor.
And they could,
That's it.
but they could still open up that area up there for development.
Yeah, but it's already ranked pretty high, isn't it?
Yeah,
It scored higher than any of the other
Yeah.
projects. Keep in mind, it's a divisional project. So, you know, you gotta look at where the funds are going. I can show you this real quick. statewide projects will get 40% of the funds, okay?
Right.
Regional projects will get 30%, divisional projects, which is Grand Hope there, but it's not a member route, will get 30% of those funds. And actually, regional funds can be used to support statewide projects.
Right.
Divisional projects could be used, so
Right.
you could end up with less than 30, it just depends on how things shake out.
And we also need to have some good conversation with Mike Mills about some of the problems.
Exactly, and that's because when you look at, like, for the divisional projects, 50% of that comes from the quantitative formulas, and then 25% of your score comes from the Mike Mills division score, whatever he gives it. And then the MPO, whichever ones, that's the 11 projects we're gonna score 100. Mike's only you gotta think about it, he's division 7, we're not just dealing with Burlington. So he's, last time he was only able to support about 3 projects for us. So he's trying to maximize those 100 points too, so the division has a chance.
Back up to the one you had before, no, the next one, the ranking.
Okay.
Where does the widening of 70 from Williamson to Greensboro fall?
Right there.
Where?
It's 60 points basically.
And I'm assuming that's considered a regional.
That would be a regional project. Yes, it's a number route.
Right.
You notice Elementary Road is ranked pretty high. 61 is not rolling.
Yeah, Allen's here. 62 right there, 61.
And the only funded project in the city is Chapel Hill Road.
54, but again, that's getting ready to get rescored.
So I thought that the money had already been put aside for that project.
It is allocated in the STIP, but again, anything after 2015 is getting rescored under the new formula. So we won't really know until July of 2015 that's when the final STIP will come out, and we'll know what projects we're actually going to get. We'll see some draft stuff before that.
Well, they've already designed that project. I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the advantages that gave Lockwood O'Neill so much clearance over this, was that you had Lockwood O'Neill would be extended to the 54, that would have been extended to get you to 85. So you had one, based on the 54 construction.
Right. Well, I thought there was the person's right away was like 16 or
It was in
something.
15 and construction in 17.
Right.
But since construction fell in 17, the DOT's rule was, if your construction is scheduled for, and this affects, I'm sure, a lot of projects statewide, if it's scheduled for after 15, you're gonna have to get rescored. And that affected 119.
And that's not to say that that's gonna hurt those two projects, because conceptually, the way the concept was solved was that it would place more money where more chance of economic development would be at. And that's extending roads to the far east and far west, and whether that's gonna play out that way remains to be
The
seen.
thing that concerns about that is based on congestion and traffic and accident data and all that, and, that's just, we struggled. We've been through this with that particular project to get us where we are today, so that's a little bit.
Well, the other thing that I was thinking with this is that maybe this project is not really what needs to be done. This was something that was, as it is up there now, maybe, and I know we're doing a comprehensive, and I understand what that means. But, just as we took the Western Boulevard or Western Loop out and did a corridor study there, recognizing we were gonna have a lot of growth potential and pressure there. Does this merit, we're having some activity in the private sector, had some private sector talk of actually cutting Bland Boulevard through across Church onto, Meadow.
Yeah.
Would it pay to take this out and do a kind of a study, a corridor study through this whole area as far as land use is concerned of its own?
I think a comprehensive plan, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think a comprehensive plan is probably, and Amy can speak to this better than me, is probably gonna tell you the areas, like what you're saying, is this a good area for that? We'll probably tell you the areas that feel like you should maybe do a more specific land use study on. However, it is something that could be done if that's something that the council feels is a priority. You could do that in concert with the comp plan, and it will give you a more detailed analysis of that area.
comp plan's gonna be, give me a comment on that again?
It will be finished by, about May or June of next year,
15?
yes.
Too late.
And-
I don't mean to pick the pace
Well,
up.
but see, if you do a quarter study, those can take up to a year by themselves. And this plan identifies prime spots for a corridor study, such as perhaps Church Street, that may rank a little higher with the needs, so it's up to you.
But back to your question, if council wants to do a corridor study based on not knowing what, you know, what we got now, what may happen from a planning process, you can do that. If I'm not mistaken, and y'all, and you two can help me out on this, but the Western Loop, that corridor study was, I think, was started before the road was finally, before the road was built.
Sure, well,
Long time.
it was.
We had an idea where it was gonna go, that was the concept behind it.
Sure.
It seemed like to me that the part of the storage study would be the beginning point, you know, to sort of get some activity over there, but really get sort of a comprehensive view of that. That's just my thinking of, you know, I know as far as, but we got to rescore it from maybe 4 or 5 years out, anyway, you know, realistically thinking.
We may wanna,
And the corridor study may try and tell you with that design that you have there with that elbow, maybe you ought to go back to the original plan and have some conversation with Graham and decide, you know, I understand affordable housing and all, come on, it's a blasted mobile home park.
Can't you do that through the, MPO, the PL, 112 planning money,
Corridor study.
part study?
well,
That would be a traffic study.
you could do a
rather
traffic,
than
I thought you
land use.
meant, community development,
No.
using CDBG funds, could you do a land use study? I don't know, Sean, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
You could, but it would be under your admin.
I mean, if you're looking for ways to fund it.
Yeah, the point is you're looking at doing a study, say, and not go too far yourself, from Vaughn Road, which is going to the north. You then come across Church Street, go by, Fairchild, and the question is, do you take it to our city limits?
Yeah. We keep talking, you know, we talk about East Burlington, we talk about East Burlington, we talk about East Burlington, but in reality, you gotta do some planning. You know, yes, the private sector took care of the Western Loop, of course it did, okay? But the city had already done the planning over there, and it was resulted in the type of development. I think East Burlington, this corridor right through here deserves, that sort of emphasis.
So we can start moving in the right direction, that's for sure.
Certainly, we could put together a proposal for a corridor study for that area and bring back to you.
I think I'm
From a
gonna ask
land
Mike
use
Mills,
perspective.
I also think I'm gonna ask Mike Mills about that as well.
But they don't, that's more planning, they're gonna do, am I not mistaken?
Yeah, they don't do that.
You know,
This would be separate.
but it's certainly something we make it fun, do some other areas to look at.
Well, you know, I guess I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you talking about working on potentially a land use study? Not doing a transportation study?
Both.
Okay. Oh, you wanna do both? Okay, so the transportation piece, we would have to have some discussion with DOT on that, because we could use potentially some MPO funds.
Right.
Unless
That's what I'm-
DOT says,
that's what
unless
I'm-
I
DOT
think we need to
says,
have
hey,
some
we've
conversation
already
with
looked at
Graham
this, and there's no need to
Staff
study.
of,
Does that make sense?
Yes,
You know,
but that's what I was thinking about.
DOT's will step up on the housing thing, though, remember that's 119, the whole deal there. But
We'll have to assess, are they willing to reevaluate those pieces of this project?
Right. But we can do both, and we can certainly record maybe in relationship with that, you know.
We'll find out.
That's a good idea.
answer to that.
But
All right.
are we good with that?
Yeah. Good job, thank you.
All right. Guys, I think, I'm afraid for sandwiches outside, everybody write your name?
Only one sandwiches.
We got them,
We had to do
outside. 7 o'clock, the back of, the next presentation, okay?
Thank you.
Support, right?
No, Rach.
Okay, let's get started again. As we indicated, some of that information, we had time perfectly for break, and then the presentation now is in reference to Project Haystack, which you've read about. I've talked to you a couple of times individually about this issue. This is a project that's been talked about for some time, and I will let Marty Warren, the Gifford County manager, introduce this whole group he has here tonight. We hope to have about a 20-minute presentation, and it'll also give you guys some time for questions. So Marty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Harold. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, Mayor and City Council members. We do have a team here tonight to talk to you about the project that is going by the name of Haystack for the time being, that we'd like to brief you on and give you some up-to-date information on. But before I do that, I'd like to introduce the team that we have with us tonight. First, we have the chairman of the Guilford County Board of Commissioners, Bill Vincini, here at the front, and we have Commissioner Linda Shaw, Commissioner Alan Branson here at the table as well. And then we have Andy Scott with the City of Greensboro, and Mike Solomons with the Timmons Group, an engineering company. You've probably heard or read about Project Haystack. This project is one that Mike Solomon will give you more history on it later, but it's been worked on for over a year, and there's quite a bit of information on it. There's quite a bit more work to do to determine feasibility, et cetera. But we're at a point now where we need to brief all of our prospective partners. We certainly hope that City of Burlington would be one of our partners to develop a site that we refer to as the county prison farm site. It's about an 800-acre site that has been identified as a potential excellent site for a technical park to attract data centers and other manufacturing centers. Our main goal here is, in considering the development of this site, is to increase the tax base and to create jobs. So it's a dual purpose that we're focusing on. We're also looking at this as a great opportunity to have a regional impact, and we're not looking at it as just a Guilford County project. We would like to, of course, include City of Greensboro, City of Burlington, Alamance County, and the town of Gibsonville, due to their proximity to the site and their interest in seeing how it's developed. I can tell you at this point, there are no firm commitments to do this project. There's still a lot of information to be gained, but the commitments that have been made to this point is that the Guilford County Board of Commissioners has appropriated $30,000 to hire attorneys to help us through this process. One of the attorneys you may know or may have heard of is Don Donadio. He's with Womble and Carlisle, and he has helped local governments assemble interlocal agreements for multiple local governments that are participating in an economic development project. And he also helps establish a nonprofit. We envision a nonprofit group with representatives from all the participants to help lead and manage the park if it comes to fruition. We also have a broker who is working to try to assemble some of the parcels on the site. You'll see a map later, and you'll see how complex and difficult that may be. We have a broker who's working to assemble the land, because if we can't assemble the site with the critical mass as far as acreage, the project will probably not be feasible. Our goal here tonight is to provide you with information and answer any questions that you have, so that you will have enough information to decide if you want to be at the table to negotiate the interlocal agreement and consider possibly being a participant in this development project. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Mike Solomon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Folks, you've read a lot about this. I've provided some briefing packages, so I'm going to go through the slides quickly on the engineering and the development information. Leave plenty of time for questions. So
Dolan, if you kick on the first one. I'm with the Cummins Group. We're a 300 engineer group. The corporate headquarters is in Richmond, but we have 4 offices in North Carolina, one in Greensboro, one in Raleigh, one in Fayetteville, and one in Charlotte. We've done projects like the Tanger Outlet. We've done the new jail downtown Greensboro. And our firm does a lot around the country with communities trying to find sites. We were hired by the Piedmont Triad Partnership to find a site for the automotive plant that is being promoted for Randolph County. I found that site on my dining room table on Saturday morning. So anyway, we gather a lot of information about utilities and topography and streams and all the information related to what sites are appropriate. And obviously this was a site that we looked at because of it being essentially surplus property from Guilford County as they developed the new jail downtown. So this was a site that, again, we quickly looked at and said it does not make sense for an automotive site. It doesn't have a highway, it's tucked away from the main thoroughfare, doesn't have the utilities, it's got a lot of issues with streams. But when I saw what was there to start with, which is a massive power line that was put in years ago for Burlington Industries, I said, gee whiz, this looks like it could be a wonderful site for a data center park. The other thing that's unique about it is the loop that goes around the site that will lend itself to feeding utilities from the outside. So that's why the site shape it is based on Highway 61, Summerdale Road, Manning, and then over to University Drive. But again, this is enough power, folks, to supply power for 2 million square feet of data center today. Andy Scott will tell you a wonderful statistic. This power line is so unique that, and its reliability relates to when it was put in the 50s for Bell Labs, that the reliability of this site is 99 and 44 nines. So this is the first element of why this is a unique piece of dirt. Next one, no. Here's the other thing. This is the icing on the cake. I know you can't see it. I'll send this to you. I don't think I put it in your package, but this is a map of the fiber optic system in the state of North Carolina. And if you look really, really, really close up here in Alamance County, to be in Burlington, go to the next slide, is the major trunk line for the state of North Carolina is that yellow line right there. So within 100 yards of the site, you've got access to Washington, to Atlanta. This is a huge fiber optic line. So once I started digging into that, I went to there's a consulting firm that works with Duke Power to site these big data center parks. And this is what will blow you away. The sites that are the carriers that are either on this site or adjacent to the site in terms of fiber optic carriers are DukeNet, Time Warner, Level 3, AT&T, CenturyLink, and Verizon. I have been working with a team of folks from all over the country. There is no site in the United States, period, that has 6 fiber optic carriers. Early on, when I started looking at this, I said, let me find out from the real experts in the data center world if this site is really something that I think it is. So I went to the 3 major brokerage firms, which is Jones Lang LaSalle, C.B. Richard Ellis, and Colliers. I went to Jones Lang LaSalle in New York, went to Colliers in Atlanta and Charlotte, and I went to C.B. Richard Ellis in Charlotte and in L.A. And they all said something of this magnitude would be unmatched. The closest thing is in Utah. Next slide. Here's the other thing that makes it so wonderful. If you think about, if you've ever been to Lenoir, to Kings Mountain, those are the 2 areas of North Carolina that got the data center sites so far. Google is in Lenoir. Actually, another one is in Macon, outside of Hickory, where Apple was going. At the Google plant in Lenoir, they took 60 feet off the top of a mountain to build the 2 Google plants that are in Lenoir. This site is essentially flat. If you've seen it, you know this area. What this map is a map that Timmons, my firm, did to show you a sense of the topography. The orange areas that are denoted are areas where the slope exceeds 10%. You can see it's essentially no orange on this map. So the cost to grade the site, to put in these facilities is unbelievable compared to Kings Mountain, which for the other sites in North Carolina. So I went to people like Holder, which is the largest data center contractor in the South. They built Disney, they built Apple, they did American Express in Greensboro. I went to Gilbane, which is a company out of Rhode Island, that's building the AT&T facility in Kings Mountain, the largest in North Carolina. I went to DPR, which is a California company that built Facebook. And I went to Whiting Turner, the company that builds every Google plant in the United States. And my question was, gentlemen, is this something that would be of great magnitude and be something that would be unique, that would attract data centers from all over the country? And absolutely yes. So the point was, it's not just farmland, it's not just a section of the community. It is a unique piece of dirt in terms of what is there. Now, Andy Scott is going to speak in a second, but for well over a year, we've been working with Harold's group, with Bob, and with various folks in the utility department, with the folks in Greensboro to bring water and sewer to the site. The other unique thing that's, again, these cities have had discussions for years, is the excess capacity that both cities have in terms of water and waste. So we've got a plan put together to bring from an existing 24-inch line that was put in years ago to serve Greensboro before Randleman Dam was built, the opportunity to buy water from Burlington to bring 7 million gallons a day into Burlington, into the site. And then for the wastewater, it would be treated at the Tom Osborne Treatment Plant, which is 4 miles to the west, owned by the city of Greensboro. So again, this regional concept, this idea of the communities working together, contributions from both is significant. Then we'll go to the next slide real quick. This is a team that we put together of folks that truthfully represent the strongest data center folks that I've been able to assemble. Rick Sellers is the head of Mission Critical for Gensler Architecture out of Atlanta. They are the largest architecture firm in the world, and this guy heads all of their data center work for the Southeast. Mike Fahey is the head broker with C.B. Richard Ellis out of Charlotte, and manages all their data center work. Jed McMillan is with the state, with DOT. This is Raul Peralta, who is with ECS, that looks at environmental and that type of work. Chris Walsh is with the mechanical firm that does most of the data centers in the Southeast. Kurt Frenzel is my fiber guy. These are other folks that have been involved. The state's involved with the community college, so that we would be beginning on the early stages to look at training and needs to potentially put a training site there on the property. Down in Kings Mountain, where the bulk of the data centers have been built, Cleveland County has a special facility at the T5 site to train the young people to work on data centers. So again, we've got a strong group that's been working for well over a year to put the master plan together, the feasibility study for engineering, the cost to get utilities, and lastly, the economic impact study. So again, this represents a lot of work. Excuse me, let me get a swallow. See you real quick, I'll be right back. Oh, if you go to the next slide. This, folks, when we first started pulling this together, we had a meeting at Elon College on the 12th of June. And that was to get people like Harold and other folks from all over the community, get 52 people in a meeting at Elon to say, here's a piece of property that we need to do something with. And it was a visioning session. So we had state people, we had utility people, we had construction folks, we had elected officials. And this is just, don't focus on the details, but essentially this was the idea that came out of, this is the work that came out of this planning session was, what do we want this property to be? We want it to stay agricultural in flavor. We want it to be to blend in with the community. We want it to create good jobs. We're not interested in other opportunities such as distribution centers, warehouses. So that was kind of the mission, to put all this together and to build a high-tech, good-paying economic generator for the community. So again, this was done back in June. Next. Here is the master plan that we had developed, and again, it's in your package. Essentially what we've got is a mixture of the blue is data centers. The dark blue would be high security. The great thing about this site, folks, is that it's secure. It's away from the interstate. They don't want to be sitting on the highway. So the thought was, my firm does a number of data centers for the government. We're doing one for the Social Security Administration. We're doing one for the NSA right now outside of Washington DC. They're searching to get away from that beltline situation. The other thing that's so wonderful here is the risk profile of earthquakes, of hurricanes, of tornadoes is absolutely the best. If you like, I can show you a map that shows this is the lowest place in the United States in terms of risk to put something like this. So again, the dark blue would be things like banks, Bank of America, Wachovia, not Wachovia, Wells Fargo. The light blue would be things like Jason Penny, or Facebook, or somebody like that. The other thing that is a major element, and let me back up a second, the data center element is about 6 million square feet. The red on this map represents what's advanced manufacturing, computers, cell phones, pharmaceuticals, high-paying jobs. But again, the point is, with this road network around the site, and the one thing that I want to point out real clear is that we pulled out this section because there's a large number of houses. Initially, this was part of the study area, but there's more people in this quadrant than the whole rest of the property combined. So the intent is to have minimal impact on the community. You'll notice that the buildings are spread out very far. The watershed regulations would allow a 70% impervious surface build out, which would be triple what is shown on this document. So in other words, what's shown here is about 26% of the land would be covered either by a parking lot or a building roof. Again, so this is not an industrial park. It's never intended to be an industrial park. It's a technology center. The other things I want to touch base on briefly is the green buildings are greenhouses. The other thing that we've been spending a lot of time on is the ability to use the excess heat. See, these data centers put off tremendous amounts of heat. So the thought would be is to use the heat from the biggest one to heat greenhouses. So there's a green element. So the Sheriff's Department presently has greenhouses. The intent would be to move them. The purple buildings are buildings that would be set aside for the universities. We've had a wonderful meeting with Leo Lambert. We met with UNCG, with A&T, with the community colleges. Let's just use as an example, Google went here and wanted to train electrical engineers. And then the park would have buildings assigned or spaces, land, so that the training could take place adjacent. So it's a job training as well as the actual employment base. But this is so big that it would take 50 years to build out strictly as a data center park. So the thought was this is a good blend for high taxes that Andy will talk about with the intent, with the impact of the data centers, and the blend would be the job producers. So it's a blend. So the economic numbers that are in your package represent a 20-year build out with over $30 million in tax revenue and 6,000 jobs. So again, a lot of work and coordination and effort to develop something that is fits well within the community. The other thing that I'll point out, these light green would be agricultural plots. So we might continue to put if you've been out there, you notice there's a lot of vineyards that the county has as part of the work farm. Keep those in place. Test plots that could be affiliated with A&T and their agricultural program. So the intent is for it to blend in the community. Again, if you look at the topography, the intent is to block it from road visibility as much as possible, and again, have minimal impact on the community and the folks that live out there. So weekly, we have visits with the folks that own the land inside the circle. We'll have our third tomorrow night. So we meet with the folks that own property that would be impacted. It's 41 landowners that are affected, and that we would solicit their interest in potentially selling the property. But this thing has been open, it's been above board, there's no secrets. We certainly will answer any question you have, but again, we think it's a tremendous opportunity. And again, it is a unique piece of property in terms of the utilities and the location. The other great thing is its location with the universities, meaning on a bigger scale, NC State, Duke, Wake Forest, its proximity to 2 major airports, its proximity to great places to live. So the response that we've gotten on a very quiet but national scene, this is a wonderful opportunity for companies that might want to move here. The last thing that I'll close with is probably the most positive thing that happened was when the hurricane hit New Jersey. Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey. The phone started ringing to the broker. When is your property going to be ready in North Carolina? Because we want to move out of Hurricane Alley. We want to get out of places that are expensive to operate, and we are thrilled with the idea of something in central North Carolina. Thank you. And we're going to have other parts of the agenda, but I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. Thank you.
Mike gave away the big numbers, and so I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but if there's anybody that is interested in the details and looking at the modeling system that the city of Greensboro uses, which is one that's common in economic development called M-Plan, and we modeled the impact on Guilford and Alamance County, and over a 20-year build out that and combined investments of $103 million in public dollars, $6.5 billion in private dollars for 11.5 million square feet built out over 20 years. That would create probably a little under 6,000 jobs, represents 720 million total economic activity in a given year, and produces to the state and local governments $39 million in tax revenue. And again, this is modeling information saying that these things hold common. You do build out this property, these jobs do appear. Based on that information, this is kind of where the impact will be. And this is based in 2013 dollars. But I think we probably have, if we haven't, we'll be glad to send the city manager a full copy of the M-Plan report. Share it with any of you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them tonight. But I will say just an anecdotal sense that this conversation tonight is an interesting one, because that actually began about 4 years ago when your former planning director and I met one day here in Burlington for lunch, and we started talking about were there ways that it made sense for Greensboro and Burlington to come together to share their strengths, to create economic opportunity and have that opportunity, the benefit of that opportunity shared by both communities. In this process with this, we've also, under the leadership of Guilford County, have that opportunity to move that idea forward and to really look at it and to make to ascertain whether it really makes sense for us to try to move forward together. Thank you for your time.
There's a question that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh, excuse me, my name is Andy Scott.
Andy Scott?
And I'm an assistant city manager for the city of Greensboro.
Thank you.
I thought everybody knew me.
Bill?
I just want to thank, again, Ronnie and the council here for allowing us the opportunity to come by and speak with you about this. We're excited about the potential of this project. The numbers that they presented certainly indicate that it would be a great benefit. We are very much aware of the issues that are involved here. We've got to come up with, once we find out who our partners are going to be, we've got to come up with multi-jurisdictional agreements to see how the revenue is going to be shared once this project is developed. We've got a lot of questions to answer about infrastructure, water, sewer, transportation. We've got a lot of work to do in terms of looking at the land acquisition and how that's going to work. So there's plenty of hurdles for us to get through moving towards this project. But I do think it is worth it, regardless of the final outcome. The fact that Burlington, Alamance County, Guilford County, City of Greensboro, town of Gibsonville can sit down and try to look what may be a real benefit to the entire region, truly to the whole central part of North Carolina. So I think it gives us an opportunity to at least communicate over some of these large economic development projects. And I just hope everybody will keep an open mind as we move forward. There are plenty of things that are complicated about this. But if we work together and focus on what the outcome can be, then perhaps we can work through a lot of the questions that I'm sure many of us have.
Thank you, Bill. I was brought on board last year when I was elected chair of the commissioners. And I've been on the board for 16 years now. I'm going on 16 years. And this I've gotten more excited over than I think anything. First of all, you know, I know the people who live out there around the farm, they want to keep it that way, but something's going to happen with that farmland, that county farm. I mean, there's just too many acres there, and the county, we've had so many people and companies and all interested in it, that I want what is the best use for the neighbors out in that area. And the fact that we can all work together on this. I presented it, the governor has seen this plan. Sharon Decker, the Secretary of Commerce, has seen this plan. We took it to Raleigh. We have shown it to every every commissioner, of course, in Guilford County. We have, every one of the legislators, we had them over, invited them over to the office. I think, did John Bluston ever get with him, Mike? Because he be over?
Boston Reynolds.
Boston who? Boston who?
Is it?
Rydell,
I'm sorry. Rydell.
Okay, that's the only two that we haven't met with, and it's just been because it seems to be a conflict every time. All of the others seem to be very, very excited over it. Certainly enough to want to pursue this and see where it can lead us and where we can go from here. But I think it's a great opportunity for us to work together as a region, which to me is so important, and this is one of the things, if any of you know, our new governor, Pat McCrory, you know this is one of the things he has pushed for. And of course, we're talking to down in Randolph County also about, you know, the mega site down there. That would be a regional thing as well. So I really feel like the time has come that this part of the area in North Carolina is going to be the one that's going to be looked at. As Mike was talking about the hurricanes and the earthquakes and all that, that's another reason. Of course, 50 below zero in Montana doesn't help any either tonight, does it? But you know, I feel like this is a good fit for the community. There's not going to be a lot of trucks going in and out. It'll probably be very quiet out in that area. Gibsonville has been on board with us. The mayor there has, and I don't think we have met with him yet, but we will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I just think we'd be foolish not to at least pursue it and see where it leads us. Our colleges and universities are very supportive of it. And when we went to Elon, we had A&T, we had Elon, we had the community colleges, and they're very excited over it. So I feel like, you know, we need to look at several things. We're not that far from Washington, D.C. We're not that far from Fort Bragg. And I really think there's a lot of things that can open up here in this area with this data center.
Let me close with one thing. I gave you on the end of the Nolan, if you don't mind. A lot of folks say, what does the data center look like? So we've got a couple of photos just to give you a sense of what some that Gensler has done. So it's just with 3 or 4 slides just to let people see that they're modern buildings. They're not concrete boxes. They are very much like an office building, but certainly have a back area where the computers are. But again, this is a campus, I think, outside of Atlanta. So, you know, the intent is to be a first-class quality development. Again, as I said earlier, not an industrial park, but something that I think would fit well. And again, we've got a good amount of interest already. We're not in a position to announce anything, but certainly as we make good progress, and certainly if there's a commitment to go forward, then a lot of folks have said, count us in.
I'd like to add one thing, on the sheriff's side of it, the shooting range is going to stay there. So there will be some of that still out there, some of his buildings are still gonna be out there. And, we have been in touch with Sheriff B.J. Barnes in Guilford County on this all along. He said somebody, either he's been there or he's had a representative at our meetings. So, and these places look for the security part, so there again, you know, we cover that part of it, so.
I'm curious,
Is there any
Mike,
questions?
I'm sorry,
Go
I'm
ahead.
curious, Mike, in reference, you said you're gonna host your third meeting
Yes.
with the community, and not the outcome, but some of the discussion to this point has been on.
Well, in general, folks that live out there, would like to keep it as green space. And Alan's been to everyone, and I'll tell you, my family owns a farm up in Virginia that's been in my family since the Civil War. So I'm very cognizant of keeping property, but the intent is to keep it its rural flavors, to have a minimal impact. Again, as Linda said, it is not gonna be an area that's gonna significantly be having big noise generating, traffic generating. One thing that I will have for you tomorrow, and I'll get it to Harold, is a letter from the NCDOT that talks about road access. And essentially the capacity of the roads, and I'll be happy to show you a map, that are from the west are adequate to serve that manufacturing area. And then from the east, from the Alamance County side, again, would be the data centers, which are minimal in terms of actual people working in the data centers themselves. As an example, the two big Google plants up in Lenore have 150 people that work in the site. But the number of people that are there that come in from the region to work on the generators, to work on the heating systems, is sevenfold that. Now, one of the things that Andy can tell you, and Marty better than I can, is the impact of the tax base from the data centers. For instance, what is it, Marty? The American Express is
The county tax bill is about 1.6 million.
So, folks, just to give you a sense, the average cost, fully fitted, of a data center is $2,000 a square foot. Think of what that would do in terms of the tax implications. So, again, the east side would be the data centers. The west side, the northwest side, would be where the advanced manufacturing, and again, it's a blend. It's just almost 50-50 in terms of what the square footage is. But,
And it's gonna take, what, 20 years to get there?
well, we estimate a 20-year build out. I mean, essentially what that assumes is one American Express building a year. So nobody wants to come in and say, well, 5 years it's gonna be fully built out. It's reasonable expectations, selective in what type of projects go in there, tight restrictions. One of the things that we're also working on is tight restrictions on covenants, heights, spacing. We're going to use Resource Triangle as an example of a park that is appropriate for this, not an industrial park. So, and then one of the things that Marty and the council has been committed to is community involvement with developing the restrictions on this property. So again, it's nothing that an engineer is going to submit. It's with an appropriate community group to develop what kind of restrictions.
So the negative, it's what you've heard to this point has strictly been wanting to keep.
They'd like to leave it as it is. They'd like to leave it as it is.
Thank you.
Sure.
But as commissioner, I want to say, that would be nice, but, you know, that's property worth, if we sold it, and it turned into a shopping center or something, imagine we could get quite a few $1 million in on it, and that's not what we're really going for. We want jobs and we want the revenue coming in, but we also want to work with the neighbors out there as much as we can and not creating a problem. I'm a country girl. I was born in the country, raised in the country, so I love the country. So I know how they feel, but again, this is county property, belongs to taxpayers, and we're gonna have to, there's just been too much interest in something's gonna happen to 800 acres of land.
And with a comprehensive land use process that would include the residents from that area, which I can't imagine that it would go forward without that process to make sure that there's compatibility ongoing.
You indicate this is 4 miles from the, Tom Osmond sewer plant. How far is it from Burlington's nearest water?
Bob's here.
We have a 24-inch water line along Highway 70, however far it is from Highway 70 up to the site.
From 2.5 to
3 miles.
Uh-huh. What size line needs to go to be at the site?
We looked at several scenarios and the best way to serve the site. While Mike indicated the site was relatively flat, the western part is at a higher elevation. So based on our system, the best way to serve it would be to build an elevated tank and a booster station and a 24-inch water line to feed that.
The other thing, and Bob should speak to this better than me, is you've also got a line that's set up for a future service to Ossipee, that could conceivably bring in water from a different direction way in the future. Is that fair to say?
There'd be some operational considerations there. It might be a possibility.
There's a second line coming into it.
Well, why, David, we always talk about looping lines
Yeah.
for water quality and so forth. The Ossipee situation is still under observance in the state in reference to whether it's to be funded or not. And then there are some pressure issues in terms of you have to go across country to get to the site from that particular road from 87. But that's a possibility.
87 north.
Yeah. Yes. This is just technically coming off. The 70 line was put in place 15 years ago. We just signed a second agreement with the city of Greensboro for a 5-year extension of our water sales to them. Technically, I believe we can do it 7 million a day.
That would be about the maximum. We did some modeling and combined between this site and Greensboro, we're limited at about 9 million a day. So we currently have a contract with Greensboro to supply a minimum of 1.5 million up to 5 million. So if this site were built out and they took all 7 million, then Greensboro wouldn't be able to supply them 5. But as we said, that's 20 years out. The main consideration is how do we get to the site and provide water as it's being built out.
So the run of the water line was about 3 miles, is that what I heard?
Somewhere in that.
What's the construction cost, projected cost on that?
Water line, booster pump station, and an elevated tank would be in the neighborhood of about $14 million.
What's the timeline, if everyone was to move forward, what kind of timeline are we thinking about opening up or something?
We're estimating if things went well and we make the progress and can assemble the site, there's a lot of things that have to come into play, but probably before you could have all the infrastructure in place and have an industry in place, it'd be about 2 years, plus or minus a few months. That's our best estimate at this point.
What is the total footprint again?
2,000 acres.
And of that 2,000 acres, the county-owned portion is 800?
Yeah, let me show you. I should have put this in the package, but. I'll send this to you. Let me walk around and then I'll tell you what you're seeing. This is the gray is the prison farm. The green would be the 1,200 acres that would be proposed to be purchased. And the yellow is the area that we eliminated because of houses. And you'll see little spots of yellow throughout where there's a residence and minimal land, there's no reason.
So the green represents 41 families for the most part?
Yes. And actually, I was wrong, it's 32. It's 32 parcels with less families, because there are some that own, the same family owns multiple, but it's 31, 32 parcels.
So the Gifford County actually owns 721 acres.
No, it's right at 800. It's one big piece of 720, And then the actual, the shooting range is a separate parcel. So the total number is right at 800 acres.
So what you have here, the overall site size is 1,900.
Right, 19, yeah, it's the 2,000 is what I used. But it's all within that loop. I mean, the intent is to keep it within the road loop. There's no intention to cross Summerdale Road, to cross 61, or to cross, in fact, if you look at this, I mean, I went through and looked at every single house and said, do you need that property? So for instance, if you look along Gibsonville Ossipee Road, we cut out all of those because there's houses there. Okay?
That side there is small for the county.
Not me, let me run it.
So this is right here?
This Gibsonville Ossipee Road.
So keeping the shooting range is good?
Well, that's a necessity.
There's gonna be about 200 acres that comes out of what the county owns, is the way I understand it, but for the sheriff's department to operate, ongoing agricultural, hot houses that he has in the spring for planting, and, some of the muscadines, and then there's also some thought process into this as a area for training, like Black and Decker, we may come in and train some prisoners.
Every dad see him.
Also, we have, you see, the FBI and SBI use that shooting range, so that was.
This is the shooting range here. And let me give you a little background. We were able to, the governor's office set us up with a consultant that does shooting ranges all over the country. He's based in Fayetteville. And if you look real close, you'll see two red lines and a yellow line. They looked at the firearms that are used at the site and basically laid out a safety corridor where there would be no concern about a bullet getting loose. So if Google is sitting here, there wouldn't be any concern about finding a round in the parking lot. So what's actually happened is the shooting range has increased. It's now all the way over here. And the other thought would be potentially to put solar in this area, if that's something that, but the point is,
My guys are well aware of stray bullets. They're in that business too, so,
but here's, again, as Linda said, here's the shooting range. But Marty, there's other things that they train dogs, they put surplus or confiscated vehicles. So anyway, that's why this area is so open here because of the shooting range.
Gentlemen, as part of your conversation before the break, we were talking about corridor studies. And Mayor Pro Tem Huffman and Councilman Ward brought up the Western Loop. The concern with the project that just went to the ground and met, and that project was one that first came, we looked at the site. And actually we met upstairs, Michael members, and Andy was here. And the issue that certainly we had was that the Western Loop and University Drive was not set up for 500 to 600 trucks to come through on a daily basis. Not only go through that area by the university, the residential communities and so forth. So I think that began to get a key to this thought pattern about what could be appropriate in terms of existing infrastructure. There's certainly some existing infrastructure challenges in terms of roadways out there. There's no question about that. But I think the comment was made earlier about distribution sites are not, that's not what is being looked at. That's one of the reasons, because there's certainly some real challenges in reference to getting a large number of vehicles to that site. I know when we did our study on the Western Loop corridor, you certainly want 600 transfer trucks a day motoring down that particular roadway. Mr. Huffman had asked earlier in a previous meeting concerning interlocal agreements and in reference to our economic development policy over the years in reference to extension of utilities. The annexation law changing does impact this in terms of potential growth for the city. Truth of the matter is, though, if I'm not mistaken, and Andy, you can speak to this better than I, but it really can't be annexed by anyone with the exception of Gibsonville. because of the annexation laws in terms of location to existing municipality. That's why all along the mindset would have been some type of multi-jurisdictional agreement, which certainly has not been talked about in terms of all in reference to who invests what, in terms of what the return might be. But that would be, Andy, you can speak a bit better than I would, probably the only option to have that there.
Well, in looking at this, basically this all falls on the Burlington side of the annexation line anyway, but it would be pretty difficult given the way the annexation laws are now for you to get this far out. Certainly impossible for Greensboro to get there. You would have actually potential from Sedalia and potential from Gibsonville to annex if they could provide a certain level of services. But in order to make real sense out here, we really do need to think in terms of an interlocal agreement that calls upon the strengths and the investment of the entire area, and that the entire area then derive benefit based on the nature of their investment. Because Greensboro and Guilford County can't do it by themselves, Alamance and Burlington can't really do it by themselves. I don't think Gibsonville and Sedalia can do it by themselves. So if it's going to happen, it's going to have to take sort of a joint effort. But we have looked, particularly because Gibsonville asked us about, well, you're just going to come out here and annex it, aren't you? We had to go through a pretty lengthy analysis to show them it was really very, very difficult. They didn't believe me. I had to show them on the map. I'll be glad to take Amy and show her what we did, but it would be absolutely impossible anytime in the next 35, 40 years for Greensboro to annex this unless the laws were to change.
And actually, it's much bigger than the existing town of Gibsonville is now, so without that annexation, that'd be possible, and for Gibsonville.
Is there a breakdown anywhere in this material of the investment from each community? Because I mean, I know what the cost would be, what I've heard about 14 million for us and 7 million gallons of water a day. So what would be the investment for Guilford County, for example, or Gibsonville or Greensboro?
The land.
Yeah, that's an answer that we've not reached yet, and we will reach that when we all sit down at the table and start negotiating on how the cost and the revenue would be shared.
Right.
So the truthful answer is we don't know yet, and we don't have any preconceived notions as to how that would work either.
Right. That comes into the open mind.
Greensboro committed the first $60,000 for the master plan, and which we paid for just to get the project started. And the council has tentatively, they haven't officially, they have tentatively agreed to $16 million in sewer.
20, right?
Close to 20 million in sewer for the project. Now, again, that's just a conversation much like y'all are having tonight. Yeah, no official action has been taken other than paying for the city pay for the master plan, the county's paying for the legal expenses and the land purchase.
Any other questions from you guys?
I asked Mac to come just in case you had questions about the economic impact, and maybe just.
Anything you'd like to share with us, Matt?
I wish the land was in Alamance County. I like the concept, a friend of mine said one time, there's a difference, the difference between a vision and a hallucination is how many other people see it. And I think what they've done here is to put out a great vision of what's possible. At some point in time back in the 1950s, somebody had this vision of Bishop Frank Park. And so, probably started with a lot less than what has been put into this. I know what Mike has done in the last 18 months from a due diligence standpoint. He's done all the right things, talked to all the right people. I concur with why this is such a unique piece of dirt. It's not just a piece of dirt. Given all the things that just over time, independently of each other, accumulated at the same spot is remarkable, actually. And then when you put what has happened just by serendipity, the weather, the lack of geologic events, all of those things matter to these end users. They put site selectors through their paces. They got 42-page RFPs. I want to see the date on power interruptions, I wanna see the data on earthquake events, I wanna see all this stuff. These are real questions that we can answer without having to spend any money, to mitigate these things. So it is, from a data spread, data center use and higher, I would be very happy to be part of a team that would represent this project and this product to the marketplace. But it takes a lot of, it's hard to wait on the first person who says, yeah, I'll give you I'll pick this place and give you 3 years to make it work. That will be a fairly unique opportunity that somebody could wait 3 years for us to get our act together. So I think spending some money in advance, or at least make the effort to start heading down that road, because the other thing clients don't want is something that's a guess or not predictable, or that's not certain. Uncertainty and unpredictability are the enemies of being successful with economic development projects. And so you want to be going down the path of telling a client that this is going, it may not all be there now, but by the time your building is ready to go, it will all be there. And the extent to which you can make somebody comfortable with that, even though it might not be in place at the time you're talking to them. So I think that's important. So I think the investment in advance, or some plan for that investment to make it all happen, is probably worth consideration. Certainly worth continuing on to the next step with these folks and moving ahead with a conceptual talk. I don't know what there is to lose about continuing on a conceptual basis.
So to make a long story short, this is a game changer in your mind.
Absolutely. Yep.
I think the one issue that remains to be seen, and Ms. Shaw runs the agreement, meeting with Secretary of Commerce, is where the state is in this. Can the state step up and be a real player just beyond transportation? Because I've got to tell you guys, we're talking about big money here. So the question is, will the state step up in coming in?
Well, that's a question that I would ask in a normal meeting or a normal situation, but obviously there's a lot of unanswered questions, and the way to beating that up right now would be to pay back $14 million. $4 million, 7 million gallons a day is not going to pay $14 million. So we'll wait another night to hear that discussion.
Depends on how you price it.
I can see another level of pricing coming.
Well, I will be spending as much time as I can begging the governor and the Secretary of Commerce. I can assure you that we all will. But at this point, you're right. I don't know where. I know it was very favorable, and I've talked with the Secretary since we met with her and you were down there. But and she's still very excited over it too. So I feel good about the response we've gotten out of Raleigh, and I think it's something that can move forward.
This would not be your history here, your traditional economic development project. It's not based on a return that we've done here based on a number of years. This, in terms of what you get back, as we've done in the past, this would be much of a broader term where you would, the calculations that Andy uses is I was asked by a gentleman, how many people can you say is going to live here? Well, we don't know who's going to live where. We don't know that in terms of what the flow of income would be, whether it's increase in sales tax, whether increase property values for homes being built. You don't know that what's going to occur there. It would be more of a regional impact. So, if we get into this thing based on what your return's going to be on the amount of money you're going to spend, I'm not sure any of us can give that answer to any of our elected boards.
Have the 32 property owners been contacted and all already?
Some, not all. That's what's taking place now. It's calls to these folks. As you might suspect, getting people with cell phones that numbers aren't published is an issue. So we're, and through relationships that we have through Alan and some folks that are out there that are helping invite these, and let me just kind of tell you, the first meeting was with folks in the Northwest. The second meeting, back to this. back to this map. The first meeting was people that lived here. The second meeting was people that lived here. Tomorrow is people that live down here.
And where is that meeting tomorrow evening?
At the church.
The church?
Yeah, at the, I'm sorry, at the,
Gibsonville
Gibson.
United Methodist,
Uh-huh.
right across from Gibsonville Elementary.
And those folks are contacted
Yeah.
because they are contiguous, or it's actually
they're in the
area?
property. But let me tell you what we're doing, and then I hope this will, we're trying to do it in groups of 5 to 6 or 7 families. We're not trying to, it isn't a setting like an auditorium with big folks. We're trying to meet quietly with small folks, and everybody's gonna be invited. Let me just say, the first thing is to talk to the folks inside the loop, and then eventually the folks from the, I mean, for instance, we're gonna visit with the merchants. But in small, controllable groups where people can ask a question and feel like that they're engaged, and that has gone very, very well. Marty's been to every one with me. Bill came to the last one. These folks will be coming so that the elected officials and the management folks are at the table. But, and certainly we'll have something in the future like a public hearing. But the point is let the person that lives on the Jones farm, the Jones family, ask their questions and feel like that they can get some direct answers. So we keep it, try to keep it, they have been 8, 10, 12 people, 2 that we've already had.
Yeah. It answers your question about Raleigh. I think if it's a regional effort, we're going to be much more successful in getting more out of Raleigh than if it isn't.
Any other questions?
Can I close with one thing?
Sure.
That Linda probably should say better than I. She invited him to a briefing in July at the county office. And the last thing he said is that the triangle's coming out of recession, Charlotte's coming out of recession, the triad needs a boost. We need to do something significant in the triad. So he's committed and he's been briefed, and again, we keep up both Tony Almeida and Secretary Decker monthly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys for being here, we appreciate it. Let's take 5 minutes, let people get out, and we'll get started again.
If I did, it's another side. That's a good line. Okay. My latest toy. I gave up my flip phone. And my children.
I'm trying to get Tyler to give up his flip phone, but it hadn't happened yet.
My children are absolutely amazed.
Tyler says it's a talking point in
Well,
the bar.
especially since they're traveling, you can Skype them and Facebook.
All right, let's go. Bob and Huffman.
Huffin's right
I'm here.
Okay.
Will legalize marijuana, we don't.
I'm sorry.
You're talking about the hot houses?
National championship. Oh, that's right, that's tonight. Florida State and Alabama? Auburn.
Close.
But other states aren't gonna see that. He said it's pretty in line.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell them all the difference we get in the line. Sales, you got it now, you got it figured out?
Yeah.
Finances done? All right.
Water's not gonna pay for it.
We are waiting on Mr. Ward, and then, Mr. Bateman, let me say, is tied up in Mebane, unfortunately.
Yeah, but why would you want to?
Will not be with us tonight, he's gonna be part of this presentation, but since he's not here, Mr. Rue and Mr. Kirkland, we've done this several times, we're gonna kind of, give you an overview. This was we talked about this about a year and a half ago at a work session. This is a complicated process we're talking about. We're gonna try to simplify it tonight to to what we believe will cover the basic needs of this whole agreement. It's ironic, we had to comment about the fiber there, and we talk about the importance of fiber, certainly not that level, but it goes back to the public easement that we're talking about here. So, Lanny, do you,
He's up here.
I'm looking at Bob for a minute. You want to go ahead and begin the process, and then you're the one to kind of go with this and give them the highlights of where we're at.
Sure. Thank you. As many of you know, we have been going through this process now for about 3.5 years, trying to determine exactly where we want to go with this program. It began, as I say, as a request from an outside utility for installation in the right of way. And that spurred some question amongst council. And council then gave us some direction to devise a policy and program for installation in the right of way. And so with that, I'm going to give you a little bit of how did we get to this point. And I promise you this is going to be short. In 2010, as I said, council instructed staff to move ahead. Later that year, we incorporated a consultant to help us with this program. In February 2011, a survey was sent to 20 North Carolina cities, and of that, we received 15 responses. We sent that out in order to assimilate information that other cities were doing in regard to this, and try to pick and choose and make our own program unique as to how we wanted to follow through with this process. During 2012, staff brought this before council on several work session discussions to inform council and to solicit some direction from council. In January of 2013, the proposal was sent to many local utilities, of which we received comments back, concerns, and from that, over the past months, we have been trying to incorporate that into the program and into the ordinance. And today, I think we have a pretty good document. You may remember last time we came before you, we had two separate ordinances. One was for right-of-way management, which basically was for the, to be utilized for the telecoms, the non-franchised utilities. And then we had a franchised utility ordinance. We've incorporated the two of those into one document now, much thinner, Mr. Huffman, than the one we brought before you last time. And so, with that, I think what we've been able to do is accommodate many of the comments that we had from utilities. And one of those overriding concerns was the fact that the franchises and the telecoms were being treated differently. And the concern was everyone will be on the same playing field, basically. So that's what I think we've been able to do with this document. What's the purpose and benefits of the public right-of-way management ordinance? Is preserve the right-of-way, basically, to control and preserve, to provide guidance, and for placement in the public right-of-way, and provide some guidance for restoration as well, oversight of that. Concerns that I've heard from council, we attempted to indemnify the city and its employees from all potential claims to provide a process that will help with the management and expedite all requests from the utilities, and to treat all requests for installation in the public right-of-way in a like manner. And what we're not intending to do with this policy is the city does not intend to regulate the practices or content of services of the utilities. We anticipate being able to manage this in the form of 3 different types of agreements. Of course, you're aware now of the franchise agreements that we have with Electric, Piedmont, and the local telephone. In this case, it's AT&T now. We're allowed to do that with those public utilities per general statute. That can be up to a 60-year agreement. We have, they are in place now. 3 of those actually have franchise in place. We had some question about AT&T, but after some review by Mr. Bateman, that does stand in effect. Right-of-way use agreement would be an agreement between the city and typically providers of telecommunication and services and cable television service. And it's being proposed to be a 10-year agreement with potential for up to 2 5-year extensions at city council discretion. And of course, the encroachment agreement, which these are usually one-time installers in the public right-of-way, or an installer that is intended to utilize the infrastructure themselves and not sublease the space on the utility they install. And with that, we're proposing that we go to a 20-year term on those. Now, I think typically now those encroachments are in perpetuity. The requirements would be that all users of the right-of-way would have to secure an agreement with the city, and those all would come to city council for approval. Every installation will be required to apply for an excavation permit. This is under current city ordinance. And via a right-of-way use application to gather information on the installation and information regarding the installer in the right-of-way. Engineering department will provide oversight, ensure the work is done in accordance with the pavement cut policy, which was another proposed policy in conjunction with the public right-of-way management ordinance that we're proposing in order to provide direction, specific direction for construction, and also it sets some fees associated with the aid the city gives in managing that. The excavation permit fees are required at the time of that application, and these fees will be based on the map and type of impact to the streets, and more specifically, the pavement. How will the city monitor the work in the right-of-way? Well, the excavation permit will be issued by our staff, and we'll have staff that will go out to the site and will help oversee the restoration, provide direction of impact to the right-of-way. The excavation fees associated with the permit are basically an application fee plus a pavement degradation fee if in fact they do impact the pavement. As I said, the application fee would be used to offset the staff time required to inspect and monitor impacts, and the pavement degradation fee is intended to recover the damaged pavement useful life that we're losing. Once you cut through a pavement, you lose useful life associated with that pavement.
Based on square footage.
Based on square footage. This just shows you pavement degradation, what takes place once you cut the pavement. You have slumping of the trench due to no lateral support in the trench, and you can see failures within and around the trench itself.
Here's a question, why is that slanted?
It's my first time using PowerPoint, remember?
Question.
Another thing that come up was about liability insurance while the actual product is in the right of way. And we talked to
Alan Crouch.
and he's recommended this company's bid between $2 and $5 million.
Yes, that they have the coverages that we have, which is, 1 million, individual, 3 million aggregate with 5 million umbrella. So they have the same coverage that we have, and also recommend that he recommended that in the policy itself, that we, can request that they provide us with annually with a current certificate of insurance.
Mr. Ward had brought something up that was interesting, was how do we keep up with that? And we're now looking at
There's a software out there, Prima, that we're trying to, we're going to purchase. We're in the process of using that software to help remind us that we're not, in other words, so we won't be relying on the vendor to say, hey, here's our new certificate, that we have something that reminds us we need to call them 30 days in advance.
So it's like the policy last time's notice, so you just.
Right.
and that just wouldn't be used for this, that could be used for a number of other things too, that we get into, with contracts. All kinds of different options there. Various departments can utilize that. Mr. Bateman put a lot of time on this, and he apologized tonight, but He worked a significant amount of hours with Lanny and with Nolan on trying to get this thing down and be as fair as we can. You've got your major, holders, the long-time holders we've had, AT&T, Butte, Piedmont, and then you got your newer companies that come in that just put in lines in and explain that. I think that's the difference here, Lanny. Give them what you're talking about there.
But technology has changed, as you know, the last 10 years, you've seen significant change. A lot of business-to-business type communication. Fiber optics has changed the landscape significantly. How these underground utilities are installed now, directional bore, they rarely open cut. You do see instances of open cut, but rarely. Sometimes they may hang those aerial on existing utility poles if they're available. But because of that, we've really been trying to keep up with the technology. And over the last 2 years, it's been a great education to myself on putting this together on things that we need to be concerned about. You know, and talking with the utilities and those folks expressing their concerns to us has really opened our eyes as well about the competition and you know, utility commission, you know, controls these guys and oversight they provide. So, I mean, I think we've got a good policy now, and the initial reviews have been pretty good, pretty well received.
Another thing about the actual having staff back there, one item, if you do bores, is it would require safety preservations there in terms of permitting and signing along the infrastructure road itself. Which most of our accidents occur is when you don't go in and properly post, you know, back at a certain distance, and it depends on the amount of work in reference to the lane closures and this type of thing. Like Lanny said, the more we got into it, and Bob was involved in this early on, it's a more complicated guy. He's got a lot of hidden moving parts here, and it's changing so quickly. You know, we believe it's a long policy, but you know, we believe it's a pretty strong policy.
Are other cities going through the same process as we are, or have they been down this road already?
A number of them have already been down the road. I guess a handful of responses we got back were just very minimal. But the Rocky Mounts, of course, Charlotte, Greensboro, Wilmington all had good policies in place. And like I say, we took from those what we felt like was the best of the information they provided to be able to make them hybrid of that. And we do intend to share this information with all those folks as they requested once we complete it.
It's a shame that you have to, when you do the bore, and you run, well, some of them got conduit, run your fiber through, that if somebody else wanted to come back in, too bad they can't piggyback in on that conduit with the other company, they'll have to bore themselves, right?
You don't see as much as the big duct banks runs that you used to see, you know, 30 years ago, where there were multiple ducts in a bank installed and you had excess space. This is usually a one type installation because of the directional board.
Any questions or comments from council?
Now, we certainly bring this for, this is a policy, and I should know this, but I don't know. Help me out on the ordinance side with Bob and Charles. This does, I think, will make council approve. And it's a fairly extensive type, again, policy, so if you guys would like to look at it in additional time, if we bring it back to council, that's fine.
And please call me if you have any questions, be happy to try to answer those questions.
I'd like to look at it. I would agree.
This is very significant, and it was sent out in your package, was it not? Yeah, it was sent out in the work session package. Sir, we'll get your another hard copy tomorrow night. Fine.
I'm with you, Pat. No, you don't. Now you're lying to us.
All right, questions or comments? See you tomorrow night.